Ever wondered what medieval folks really thought about romance? Did knights and ladies have relationship drama just like us? Number 11. He that takes a wife takes care. Imagine scrolling through medieval TikTok and seeing this gem pop up on your For You page. This proverb was basically the Middle Ages version of wife equals strife. Memes that boomer uncles share on Facebook today. Medieval people didn't sugarcoat marriage. They saw it as a serious responsibility that brought just as many headaches as it did happiness. When a medieval man took a wife, he wasn't just gaining a partner. He was signing up for a lifetime of worries about providing food, shelter, and protection. In those days, marriage wasn't primarily about romance or personal fulfillment, though those could develop. It was an economic and social partnership with real consequences. Noble families used marriages to forge alliances, while commoners needed partners to help run farms or workshops. The proverb reminds us that medieval folks were pragmatic about relationships. They understood that love came with baggage, literal responsibilities that could weigh you down. Next time you stress about your significant other leaving dirty dishes in the sink, just remember, at least you're not worried about Vikings raiding your village or the plague wiping out your family. Number 10. A good wife makes a good husband. This medieval saying might sound surprisingly modern in its recognition of how partners influence each other. Before we start applauding medieval gender equality, though, let's break down what this actually meant to people in the Middle Ages. When medieval people talked about a good wife, they weren't thinking about someone who supported her husband's emotional growth or encouraged his dreams. They were referring to a woman who managed the household efficiently, remained faithful, produced children, preferably sons, and showed proper submission to her husband's authority. The proverb suggests that when a wife fulfilled these duties well, her husband would naturally be good too, meaning he would be respected in the community, successful in his work, and able to maintain his proper role as head of the household. Medieval marriage manuals and conduct books frequently reminded women that their behavior directly affected their husbands' reputations and success. Christine de Pizan, one of the few female writers of the era, advised women in The Treasure of the City of Ladies, 1405, on how to manage their husbands with subtle diplomacy while maintaining the appearance of proper wifely submission. Interestingly, this proverb acknowledges the power dynamic worked both ways, a concept that challenged the strict patriarchal structure of medieval society by admitting women had influence over men's behavior and standing. Number 9. A woman's tongue wags like a lamb's tail. This colorful saying perfectly captured medieval attitudes about women's speech. If you've ever seen a lamb's tail in motion, you know it never seems to stop flickering back and forth, exactly how medieval men characterized women's alleged non-stop chatter. This proverb wasn't just a harmless joke. It reflected deeply entrenched beliefs about gender differences that influenced everything from legal rights to daily household dynamics. Medieval authorities, from religious leaders to medical experts, claimed women were naturally more talkative than men due to their cold and wet humoral makeup, according to medieval medicine. This wasn't considered a positive trait. In fact, excessive talking in women was associated with other negative characteristics, like deceitfulness, inability to keep secrets, and moral weakness. The English poet Geoffrey Chaucer plays with this stereotype in the Canterbury Tales, particularly in The Wife of Bath's Tale, where the outspoken and much-married wife of Bath both embodies and subverts the stereotype of the endlessly talking woman. Church sermons frequently warned against gossips and scolds, and some communities even used punishment devices called scolds' bridles, metal cage-like contraptions fitted over a woman's head with a piece that pressed down on her tongues from wagging. The lamb's tail comparison seemed cute and pastoral, but it carried serious implications about restricting women's voices in medieval society. Number 8. Women are saints in church. angels in the street, and devils at home. This medieval zinger reveals the contradictory expectations placed on women's behavior in different social contexts. The three-part structure cleverly captures how medieval society demanded women perform different versions of femininity, depending on where they were and who was watching. In church, women were expected to embody pious devotion, modesty, and silent reverence, the perfect saint-like behavior that proved their moral virtue. When out in public spaces like markets or town squares, women needed to present themselves as angels, dignified, reserved, and above reproach, maintaining their family's reputation through impeccable deportment. But the stinger comes in the final part, devils at home, reflecting men's complaints about women's behavior in private domestic spaces. This could refer to several things: women's alleged nagging, complaining, or shrewishness, their supposed emotional volatility, or even their sexual demands. Yes, contrary to popular belief, medieval people acknowledged female sexual desire, though they were deeply conflicted about it. This proverb shows up in various forms across medieval European literature, but it's especially common in late medieval and early Renaissance Italian writings. Giovanni Boccaccio's De Tamerone, a collection of often bawdy tales from the 14th century, frequently plays with the contrast between women's public piety and private passions. The saying reflects a fundamental anxiety in medieval culture: the belief that women's true natures were hidden and possibly dangerous, requiring constant monitoring and control. Number 7. 3 things drive a man from his house: smoke, rain, and a scolding wife. Medieval home life wasn't always blissful, as this brutally honest proverb makes clear. This saying appears in various forms across medieval Europe, creating a vivid picture of domestic discomforts that could drive a medieval husband to seek refuge elsewhere. The comparison is particularly telling. A nagging wife is ranked alongside actual physical discomforts, like a smoky hearth, a serious problem in medieval homes with imperfect ventilation, and rain leaking through the roof. All 3 made home life unbearable. This proverb gives us insight into medieval marital dynamics and the spaces where conflicts played out. Most medieval homes were single-room dwellings where privacy was non-existent, making marital disputes very public affairs. The scolding wife stereotype appears frequently in medieval literature and art, from marginal illustrations in manuscripts showing wives beating husbands with distaffs, spinning tools, to popular stories of henpecked husbands. The most famous literary example might be Noah's wife in medieval mystery plays, who refuses to enter the ark and berates Noah mercilessly, a character that always got laughs from audiences familiar with domestic power struggles. Interestingly, while the proverb presents the husband escaping the home, medieval court records show that women could be publicly punished for being scolds, suggesting that society took steps to protect men from this supposedly terrible female behavior. The cucking stool, a chair used to dunk scolds in water, wasn't just a folk memory. It was an actual punishment used against women deemed too vocal in their criticism of husbands or neighbors. Number 6. Choose neither a wife nor linen by candlelight. This practical, medieval dating advice warns against making important decisions without proper illumination, both literally and figuratively. The comparison between selecting a wife and examining linen cloth is particularly revealing about attitudes toward marriage in medieval times. Just as a candle's dim yellowish light might hide stains or weak spots in fabric, it could also conceal flaws in a potential spouse's appearance or character. This proverb wasn't just about physical appearances, though that was certainly part of it, but about the importance of seeing clearly before making a lifetime commitment. Medieval marriages among common people were generally more practical partnerships than romantic unions, though affection was certainly hoped for. What mattered was finding someone healthy, hard-working, fertile, and from a family of good standing. For noble families arranging marriages, the stakes were even higher, with property transfers and political alliances riding on good matches. The candlelight metaphor worked on multiple levels. Beyond the literal advice to view a potential spouse in clear daylight, it suggested taking time to investigate their reputation, family background, and circumstances. Medieval literature is filled with stories of hasty marriages that end badly. In real life, communities had systems to prevent such mistakes. The Catholic Church required marriage bans to be read for 3 consecutive Sundays before a wedding, giving anyone with knowledge of problems, like an existing spouse or family relation, time to come forward. This proverb echoes the medieval preference for caution and community oversight in marriage decisions rather than impulsive choices based on attraction alone. Number 5. A woman, a dog, and a walnut tree. The more you beat them, the better they be. Shocked you should be. This disturbing proverb reveals the darkest aspect of medieval attitudes toward gender relations and violence. First appearing in written records around the 15th century, this saying bluntly endorsed physical violence against women, placing them in the same category as animals and plants that supposedly benefit from correction. While modern readers are rightfully horrified by this sentiment, we need to understand its context in medieval society, not to excuse it, but to recognize how ideas about gender, discipline, and hierarchy enabled such violence. Medieval law and custom granted men authority over their households, including the right to reasonably chastise their wives. What constituted reasonable varied widely, and many communities had informal standards about acceptable levels of violence. Some medieval legal codes specifically limited how and when a husband could strike his wife, for example, not drawing blood or using weapons, suggesting that excessive violence was recognized as problematic even then. Interestingly, court records show medieval women weren't always passive victims. They sometimes fought back, complained to church authorities, or enlisted neighbors' help against abusive husbands. The poet Christine de Pizan, writing in the early 15th century, explicitly condemned domestic violence, arguing that education rather than force was the way to influence behavior. Still, the casual comparison of women to dogs and walnut trees reflects a fundamental dehumanization that enabled systematic oppression. The proverb's persistence, it was still appearing in collections of folk wisdom into the 19th century, demonstrates how deeply entrenched these attitudes remained long after the Middle Ages ended. Number 4. He who has a fair wife needs more than 2 eyes. Jealousy, surveillance, and honor obsessions come together in this revealing medieval proverb about beautiful wives. This saying gets right to the heart of medieval anxieties about female beauty and fidelity. Having an attractive wife was both a status symbol and a source of constant worry for medieval men who feared other men's attention might lead to infidelity, bringing shame and questioning the legitimacy of children. The proverb suggests that a husband needs eyes everywhere, watching his wife's behavior, monitoring who approaches her, and staying alert to gossip that might damage family honor. Medieval literature is filled with stories of beautiful women whose attractiveness leads to tragedy. The most famous might be the legendary romance of Tristan and Isolde, where King Mark's beautiful wife Isolde falls in love with his nephew Tristan, leading to deception and ultimately death. These cautionary tales weren't just entertainment. They reinforced cultural messages about the dangers of female beauty and the need for vigilance. The emphasis on eyes in the proverb also connects to broader medieval beliefs about vision and desire. Medieval optical theory held that seeing beautiful things could physically imprint desires on the viewer's heart through the eyes. This made visual encounters genuinely dangerous in medieval understanding. Just seeing a beautiful woman could trigger uncontrollable passion. This explains why women's dress codes were so strict, and why many religious writers warned against even looking at attractive members of the opposite sex. The Proverbs' wisdom wasn't just about jealousy. It reflected genuine medical and moral theories about how beauty operated on the senses and soul. Number 3. Marry in haste, repent at leisure. This timeless warning against rushed marriages has medieval origins, but remains surprisingly relevant today. In medieval society, marriage was the most significant contract most people would enter in their lifetime. It affected property rights, community standing, family alliances, and everyday survival. The proverb wisely warns that while getting married might take only moments, the consequences of a poor match would last for decades. What made this advice particularly pointed in medieval times was the near impossibility of ending an unhappy marriage. Divorce, as we know it, didn't exist. While church courts could grant annulments, declarations that a valid marriage had never existed, or separations from bed and board, allowing couples to live apart without remarrying, these were difficult to obtain and usually available only to the wealthy and well-connected. For most people, marriage truly was until death do us part, making careful consideration before saying, "I do," absolutely essential. Medieval literature frequently features characters who rush into marriage and suffer for it. In Chaucer's The Miller's Tale, Alison's hasty marriage to the much older John sets up the entire comic plot of infidelity that follows. Medieval parents worked hard to arrange suitable matches for their children, considering factors like character, work ethic, family connections, and economic prospects. While modern readers might think arranged marriages lacked romance, medieval people would have been equally horrified by our practice of marrying quickly, based primarily on emotional attraction, with minimal community, input, or practical consideration. The wisdom of this proverb transcends its medieval origins, reminding us that life-changing decisions deserve careful deliberation. Number 2. A woman's work is never done. This familiar saying originated in the Middle Ages and perfectly captures the relentless labor expected of medieval women. Far from being idle or decorative, medieval women of all social classes worked constantly, with responsibilities that stretched from dawn until well after dusk. For peasant and townswomen, daily chores included not just cooking and cleaning, but also producing essential goods. Women brewed beer, baked bread, preserved food, spun thread, wove cloth, made clothes, tended gardens, cared for animals, watched children, and assisted with harvests, all while managing pregnancy and nesting for much of their adult lives. Even noble women oversaw large households, supervised servants, managed estates when husbands were away, and produced textiles. The endless nature of women's work contrasted with men's labor, which, though physically demanding, typically had clearer boundaries and seasons. When a farmer plowed a field, that task was completed until the next season. When a woman swept the floor, it would need sweeping again tomorrow. Medieval artwork provides visual evidence of women's constant labor, showing them engaged in dozens of occupations from blacksmithing to book copying, though domestic tasks remained their primary responsibility. The gendered division of labor wasn't just about tradition. It reflected practical needs in a society without modern conveniences. Women's work could be performed while supervising children, could be interrupted and resumed as needed, and often took place near the home. The proverb acknowledges what medieval women knew from experience: their essential contributions to family and community survival through never-ending labor that received little recognition, but without which medieval society could not have functioned. Number 1. Love is the wisdom of the fool and the folly of the wise. This sophisticated medieval saying captures the paradoxical nature of romantic love that people still recognize today. Unlike some of the more practical or misogynistic proverbs we've examined, This one shows medieval people could be philosophical and nuanced in their understanding of love's complexities. The proverb cleverly observes how love reverses normal patterns. It makes fools seem temporarily wise in their passion, while making otherwise sensible people act foolishly. This saying likely emerged from courtly culture of the 12th century onward, when romantic love became a fashionable literary and social concept among the upper classes. The iconic medieval story of Abelard and Heloise perfectly illustrates this proverb. Peter Abelard was one of the greatest intellectuals of the 12th century, renowned for his brilliant philosophical mind until he fell passionately in love with his student Heloise. His actions afterward, secretly marrying her, hiding their relationship, then abandoning her to a convent after her family discovered the affair, show how love transformed this wise man into someone who made disastrous decisions. Their love letters, preserved and famous to this day, show both the beauty and destruction their passion caused. Medieval literature is filled with characters transformed by love, wise kings who neglect their duties for passion, clever women who abandon reason for romance, sensible knights who undertake impossible quests for their beloveds. What makes this proverb particularly interesting is its reluctance to pass judgment. It doesn't condemn love as simply foolish, nor does it blindly celebrate it. Instead, it acknowledges love's power to transform people in ways that defy ordinary categories of wisdom and folly. This sophisticated understanding suggests medieval people weren't simply rule-bound and pragmatic about relationships. They recognized the same mysterious, irrational aspects of romantic love that continue to inspire our art, literature, and personal experiences today. Ever felt like our struggles with love and relationships are uniquely modern? What if our romantic complications are just the latest verses of a song that's been playing for 1,000 years?